One thing that I've been meaning to do for quite some time is to talk about the missing 20th century of books. Now, this is coming to us from Lee Beaton on Tech Dirt, but the problem is that no one really understands the book industry and how it has essentially changed. What has been happening is that we've had a missing 20th century. These are the newest books that have come from Amazon by decade. 1800, 1820. Look at how the 1900 and 1910s just essentially exploded with new books. Now, by the 1920s, the 1930s to 1980, we haven't really had a lot of books, right? And then 1990 and 2000 take off. Well, here's the thing. The source of that massive fall off at the midpoint is simple. All books published in the US in 1922 or earlier are in the public domain. What's immediately apparent from this graph is that copyright is actually limiting the public's access to older works. Here's the reason why. To truly understand this, we can actually look in moral panics and copyright wars. For works created between 1923 and 1963, creators or publishers had to register to receive copyright protection for 28 years, and they could then renew for another 28. Petrie looked at data from 1958 to 1959 and saw that in every medium except film, the majority of creators didn't bother to review their copyright registrations. So, just look at it for a second. Books are at 7%, maps 48%, movies were at 74%. If an author or publisher didn't renew the copyright on a book, means they didn't think they could make any more money with it. So the copyright had actually lost its value. It wasn't really worth it to submit a form to renew a copyright unless you actually needed it. Most copyright supporters seem to ignore the public domain can actually renew the value of art and stimulate the economy by allowing others to exploit additional commercial value from a work beyond what was possible under copyright. So as Lee Beaton is saying here, the commercial usefulness of a monopoly on a book has a shorter shelf life than a monopoly actually granted by copyright law. So the shelf life of a copyright is actually under 28 years. Some things it can actually last longer than 28 years. There's a huge contradiction here. If the majority of copyright registrations went unrenewed, the majority of books published between 1923 and 1963, as you can see here, 1923 to 1963, would have been renewed, would have lapsed into the public domain alongside the books from 1922 and earlier. So the drop-off in Hill's chart would be much, much smaller. So this is not a conflict of data, it's a symptom of another massive and entirely separate problem with copyright law, the difficulty of determining a work's status. The fact is, the majority of 1923 to 63 books are indeed in the public domain because they weren't renewed. There's only one way to know this for sure. Check the records held by the Copyright Office. But none of the records from that period have been digitized, so the only way to check them is to actually go to Washington and visit the physical card catalog, or pay a researcher to do it for you. All of this effort and all of this expense means that we don't have access to public domain works with the copyright laws that we currently have in this day and age. Publishers are probably eager to offer public domain titles, but they can't because the lack of copyright is not guaranteed. So they could probably be sued by somebody who they can't really do anything from 1923, such as The Wizard of Oz, because the fact is, if it's not in the public domain, they can be sued for it. Of course, neither registration nor renewal is required. Everyone is granted a statutory copyright on everything they create, lasting until long after their death. But the clear evidence that the value of a commercial monopoly always expires in a fraction of that time. So instead of 70 years, it basically works in the first 7 years. So of course, what I would want this to be as high as I would want all of these graphs to be as high as the ones in 1910 or even in 2000. But now we can't do that. because of copyright law. So of course, I want to see copyright reformed. I want to see more new books, and I want to see older books so that way the price of books can be a lot cheaper. But of course, I'd love to know what other people think. Let me know, and I will see you in the next